Hello, Evan here of Moviesauce. So I felt like I should talk about or explain this new documentary I have on our channel. It's very rare that we get to do a feature-length project. We've only done 2 feature films. We're working on a third narrative feature. Um, but we have this feature-length documentary called As Is by Nick Cave, which I just uploaded a couple weeks ago to our YouTube channel. Nick Cave is a very interesting visual artist, not to be confused with Nick Cave, the musician, who also had a documentary that came out this year. Um, but Nick Cave is famous for these colorful sound suits he does and these big gallery shows he's done in pretty much all the major cities across the country. He came to Shreveport, which is where I work and live, which is the smallest town he'd ever come to do a project. Our Shreveport Regional Arts Council, or SHRAC, they brought Nick to Shreveport to do a show. His project, it's called As Is. It involved a lot of different things. For me, it started in August 2015, or maybe July, when I first got contacted by SHRAC about possibly doing a documentary. I met with them and agreed to do it. At the time of our first meeting, it was going to be a 3-month project. It was July, and there was going to be a big show in November, and they wanted to document everything Nick was doing leading up to the show, as well as the show itself. My assignment was actually a 3-parter. In addition to the documentary, which is now kind of the biggest part, I was also tasked with producing a handful of these little teaser videos, which you may have seen on our channel over the course of the last year. They're also called invasions. Basically, it was me and Josh Porter from Shrek and Nick Cave and Bob Faust. We would go out with sound suits to various locations around town and film these little vignettes of showing off different sound suits at different locations. Kind of the idea was to show Nick Cave is in town. He's in Shreveport. He's here, and to be kind of vague and interesting, kind of pique people's interest. They're designed to just be little, like, short 30-second things that we could put online and social media that would kind of tease what was coming. So we made those first while I started the documentary back in August. And then they also needed me to produce, to film eyeballs of some of the residents of the houses that were involved in the project to be projected during the final show, like close-up shots of eyeballs, as well as a heartbeat and an animation of a EKG going with the heartbeat that would be projected on the floor. It was a very big multimedia project. So those are the 3 different things I did, was the eyeballs and heartbeats, the invasion/teaser, and the documentary. So I followed, Nick would come to town basically once a month to check on the progress of the show. And I would film while he was in town, kind of going and checking in on everybody. The show very quickly got pushed from being a 3-month project to having the show in November of 2015 to being an 8-month project with the show in March of 2016 because they realized they need more time to develop the show. And the show involved a lot of different people in the community. The reason it's called As Is this will be my kind of attempt at a translation of it, but basically the idea is we're all human and we all need to accept each other how we are, and as it's related to this project and creating art, the idea was to kind of take down the barriers of entry for being part of a giant show, performance show. So the idea was to have all these, allow members of the community to participate by helping to create these beaded blankets, which are featured in the show. And then also Nick worked with these nonprofit agencies that are based in Shreveport in the specific area called Shreveport Common. It was the VOA Lighthouse, the Mercy Center, the Providence House, and the VOA Center. These organizations all work with people in need from various situations, children to homeless families to people living with HIV and people with mental disabilities. So Shrek and Nick work together to get these resident artists to from the local community to kind of set up shop in these different organizations to help kind of guide the act of building blankets with the residents. In addition to that, the resident artists also made a lot of their own blankets. So for a lot of the kind of August to March period was the artists working together to try to build 30 of these beaded blankets. I think they ended up actually making like 50 or so. That would be used in the show, and then also became the blankets also became kind of these art pieces for the city to kind of have afterwards. I think the houses will hang some of them right now. They're on display at a gallery in town. And then the other side of the performance, that was all the kind of the community-based element. But there were also all kinds of artists, including musicians and dancers and soloists and a choir, and I guess there's some original animation made, and the eyeballs and heartbeats that I did as a filmmaker. There are a couple more film pieces in there. So it's like all this different multimedia, all these different people coming together. So all those people are local as well. So a local animation was being, the local animator was making animation for the floor. Local dancers were practicing choreography to perform in Nick's sound suits. And then one of the pieces involves people that are called initiates, who are being dressed up by these practitioners, which ended up being the resident artists, and dress them. That's the ceremonial thing where people sit there and put these frames on and plug all these crazy handmade sticks into this frame, and they transform from being kind of a naked person into this beautiful sculpture. They're not really naked, they're like just stripped down to their bare clothes. So that's one of the pieces. And so all of that kind of came together over the course of those 8 months. And Nick would come in once a month, check in on things, try to make sure everybody was on track, kind of funneling everybody in to the performance. And then my job was to film, after the teasers and the eyeballs, to film Nick documenting kind of his guidance of the project. And then eventually, the week leading up to the show is when we did most of the documenting of kind of just the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day assembly of the show and the dress rehearsals and all that stuff. And the intention originally was to have something that would be kind of a testament to what this was. And there weren't really any specific outlines as far as how long it should be or what it was going to be. I think all of us kind of figured it would probably be like a 20 or 30-minute project maybe. The documentary is just really meant to show kind of quickly what it was. But the more, it was very hard for any of us at the beginning to really see what it was going to be. And as a filmmaker, it was hard to kind of know what to document. I kind of had to just be a fly on the wall and shoot a lot. And then what happened is after the show in March, I realized I'd filmed over 50 hours of footage. It's about 10 terabytes worth of footage, shot with the Red camera. And I had all of this stuff, and it was going to take me a lot longer to edit, and it was probably going to be a much bigger film than any of us were planning on. So I worked on that from March until this past November. We had the premiere, and then I put it online. It was kind of a part-time project. I wasn't fully employed making it, but I was hired for this whole project, so it is ultimately, it's kind of on the fence between, it is a client project, but it was also a very personal project, and I took it upon myself to make it bigger than it had to be, than anybody expected it to be, than what I was being paid to do. I did a lot more work, volunteered a lot more man hours to making it basically into a feature. And then kind of in the final stages, Bob Faust helped me kind of come in with some fresh eyes and kind of shave it down to kind of where it is today, which is kind of the most what's the word? The simplest and most kind of concrete version of it. The first cut was like almost an hour, 40 minutes, and now it's about an hour and 10 minutes, so to shave about 30 minutes off of it, make it a little easier to watch and clearer to people that weren't involved in the show. But basically now, kind of by circumstance, we've ended up with our first feature-length documentary project, as well as another feature film in our kind of portfolio that we weren't necessarily planning on. And actually, I was making our new film, Clowns and Robbers, that kind of overlapped with this. The Nick Cave show happened in March. We started kind of talking about clowns back in January. We're kind of writing it in March and April, May. Started shooting in July, which is when I was editing Nick Cave as is, and so on and so forth. So we finally got that one done. It's on the internet now, available for free, because that's kind of one of the themes of the documentary, is that art needs to be available to people that might not otherwise have an opportunity to be a part of it. So we decided to just put it on, rather than go through a lengthy festival process or try to sell DVDs or whatever. It seemed like the best route was to put on YouTube, put it out there for free, let people watch it. So that's kind of how we ended up where we are now. Because you might, I don't know, I just felt like I probably haven't ever kind of explained where that came from. And our client work is generally pretty self-explanable. But that was kind of a special project that kind of grew and morphed into this thing that was bigger and more intensive than I imagined at the beginning of it all. So, and it was really an interesting kind of creative challenge for me too, because it, doing I'd never done a documentary that big that wasn't like a behind-the-scenes video of our making one of our films, which is kind of a throwaway type thing. This was much more serious, and using a notable kind of celebrity artist as the subject, that I have to be cautious of his persona and kind of it's his project, it's his artwork that's in it, it's his story, and so trying to guide. It's kind of a fine line. You have to, I'm not showing up and making my film. It is my job to accurately portray what Nick was doing, and it's all about Nick's process and kind of the impact he was trying to have on the Shreveport community, and also the people involved and kind of what their process was and what it meant to them. And all in all, the film is now just meant to be this kind of lasting artifact of what happened with that project, and kind of hopefully be a template for similar type art projects for other communities that might be looking for ways to kind of do large-scale community art projects. So that's what that is. That's where that came from, and just felt like it needed an explanation. So that's why we made Nick Cave As Is, or As Is by Nick Cave. That's where that documentary came from, and you should check it out because I think it's pretty cool.